many tools that could drastically change the look of your work, but this Blazar lens is one of them. Let's talk about it. Alright, so the first thing I noticed on these little guys was the barrel distortion. I personally love the look of barrel distortion because it makes the image feel like it's popping out of the screen at you. And a few years ago, I shot a mini doc on the Atlas Orion 50mm lens, and those have a little bit of barrel distortion, and I've been chasing that look forever. And now I feel like I finally have it at an affordable price. The pincushion distortion from other budget anamorphic lenses is what made me not get them in the first place, so having barrel distortion on this was a big go for me. I'm not gonna lie though, at times the barrel distortion feels a bit much depending on the scene. Like on this shot, you can see that the horizon is not straight, it's bowing out towards you, almost like a C shape, and it's such a quick easy fix with the lens distortion effect. You just toss it on there, find the sweet spot, and your horizon's good to go. Clinical lenses have their time and place, but I'm not the type of guy to want that in my own work. One of my favorite lenses is the Canon FD 50mm lens because of the softness and the glow and the little bit of chromatic aberrations it creates when you're a little bit wide open, and I'm looking for those. I'm looking for that feel in a lens. But that lens could be sharp as a razor when you close it down, just like the Blazar. And this lens has a lot of those attributes. It has a ton of character, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But one of the gripes that I have on this lens is from this distortion, but we'll talk about that in the cons. Another thing that really stood out to me was the bokeh on this lens. It falls off so beautifully, and it almost looks painterly the way that it renders the background. What I did notice on some shots when I was shooting at 5.6 or f8 was the chromatic aberration. Like, there was a shot where I looked at the mountain and it had a thin little orange line, and I thought I accidentally had halation on DaVinci, but then it clicked to me that it was actual chromatic aberration. And in some shots, like the left side of the mountain, you can see that it's like a little blue, and then it turns into an orange side. And I actually really enjoyed that look, and I probably should get this lens shimmed so I could get a little bit less of that, but I don't mind it. I actually really enjoy the look. I feel like it adds a little character as long as it's not too much. I also shot everything on my s5 in open gate mode, so the outsides of the lens are definitely going to be a little softer, and I think a little bit of that aberration was coming from that as well. But if you're shooting on a Super 35 sensor, you definitely won't have as much aberration around the edges since it's a little cleaner in the middle. The majority of the time that I used this lens on my trip, I was shooting at f4, f5.6, and f8 because I wanted the scenery to be as sharp as possible. When people think of sharpness, they think of the sharpness from a spherical lens, which is sharp from corner to corner, but we're talking about anamorphic here, so it'll be a little sharper around the middle, and then it softens up around the edges, and that's completely normal, especially if you're shooting on a larger sensor. But when it comes to sharpness, this lens definitely delivers, especially when you're stopped down. These bad boys render detail beautifully, especially when they're stopped down around f4 and f8. You can see all the detail in the mountains and the grass, and I'll put a couple examples here so you can see the sharpness. I don't know what it is about these lenses paired with the s5 IIX. It just gives you this beautiful look. Like, the s5 IIX is notorious for having too much of a digital look, especially compared to the s5. So pairing these two guys together, it just takes that digital edge away, and it just gives you a beautiful, softer look. And sometimes I even soften my images in post in DaVinci because it's just too sharp sometimes, and when I throw this lens on, I don't have to do that. When I ordered my Remus, I got the blue flare, and when I was picking up, they had the amber, the silver, and the blue. But I think they stopped selling multiple colors. I think they just sell the silver and the blue now. Correct me if I'm wrong. But when I've seen other budget anamorphic flares, I feel like they're too much. It's almost gimmicky. And I think Blazar took a good route where it's just tasteful enough and it's just not too far. You know what I mean? They can vary in thickness depending how bright the light is and the direction that it's coming from, but Blazar really did them justice here. And you might hate me for saying this, but the flares are the last thing that I'm looking for when I'm looking at an anamorphic lens. What I love about anamorphic lenses is the scope, the softness in the edges, and hell, even the chromatic aberration. Like, I'm looking for the juice. I don't want something perfect. And like I said earlier, I love the Canon FD 50mm lens because of the glow and the chromatic aberration that it has, but if you stop it down, it's sharp as a razor. But that's a spherical lens, but it still has those beautiful characteristics. I'm not looking for that perfect corner-to-corner sharpness, and those are the characteristics that I found in this lens as well, so that's what I'm looking for, and I love it. And if you like that, you're gonna love this lens. And the next thing that I love about this lens is the size. This thing comes in at 735 grams, and you know what weighs that much? a can and a half of soup, roughly. So just imagine that in your hand, and it's light as hell. It's not going to break your back, it's easy to pack, you can carry it wherever, and you're not going to be hurting. So, and another thing that stood out to me about this lens is that the whole thing is made out of metal, especially coming at this price point. I wasn't expecting that. And if you're anything like me and you beat the hell out of your equipment, this thing's going to last. This thing will survive you. If it survives me, it's going to survive you, trust me. When I took this to the Highlands, it was getting rained on. I accidentally hit it against my car, and looks brand new, still working. I'm pretty sure it's not weather sealed, but it's working. It's all that matters. And as always, we've only been talking positively, but now it's time to cover some cons. My biggest con with this lens is the distortion around the edges of the frame. If you have a subject coming from either the left or the right, you'll see that the subject starts really thin and they begin to widen out. But with budget comes workarounds, so all you have to do is throw a lens distortion effect and fiddle around with the number until you correct it, and you're good to go. It's a quick, easy fix, and for, what is it, $900? I don't care. I'll fix it. And my second con is the minimum focus distance, and this is me being nitpicky because anamorphics are notorious for not having good minimum focus distance, so bear with me. The minimum focus distance on this thing is 0.68 meters, or 2 feet 4 inches for my friends running on Freedom units like myself. And the solution for this is super easy. Just get a set of cheap diopters off Amazon. They're like 15-20 bucks. I'll link them down below, and then you could be down and dirty in the details. Alright, make sure you check out my last video where I use this lens entirely, and let me know what you think. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Peace.